What's up? This is Harry, aka LemonVin. I'm a cook and sous chef, and you're watching 100 Miles from Home.
I don't remember your name, but this feeling got me thinking you used to be good in the day. We far back where we good people inside. We should chill, that was drink, no one else, so it's good. If it's different, then we should be good. If it's different, then we should be good.
And we're back again here. It's episode 4 of 100 Miles from Home. I think I said this in one of the last episodes, but one of the most rewarding things about this whole process has been able to reconnect with people that I've been friends with in the past, kind of anchoring together with these creative processes. And to my right here, we have Harry, aka LemonVin. It's been great to see you, man. We've hung out a little bit earlier for the last couple hours. We got dinner and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Man, when was the last time that I saw you? You think?
God, thank you for having me here.
Of course.
It's been a true learning experience with all the AV stuff. But no, I mean, I think it might have been 19 or 20 years old.
Yeah, right. So that
would have been 2016.
2016, yeah. So I'm sure we don't, unfortunately, we don't have 5 years worth of time to cover, but I'm sure we can condense it. You are in the restaurant business, right?
Yes.
And you're a classically trained chef and currently working as a sous chef. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So I went to culinary school at the ICC, International Culinary Center, formerly known as French Culinary Institute. Not to toot their horn, but alumnus such as Dave Chang, Dan Barber, Bobby Flay, lots of people like that.
I only know Bobby Flay, but that's all you need to say. Add Guy Fieri to the list and we're good, right?
Flavortown.
right.
No, but so I trained there, did the program, and then I worked in New York City, both in Brooklyn and Manhattan, both doing stages. Do you know what a stage is?
No.
So a stage is, think of it like, it's sort of like an internship in the restaurant industry. So what you'll do is you'll go and work at a restaurant for free, but in exchange for doing that, you'll get to learn a lot of things you wouldn't have learned otherwise. So you might assist one of the chefs or cooks. You might get to learn how they do things. Maybe you do that for a little while before they offer you a job. But I did that as well as just working as a cook.
Is it the same thing as kind of like interning in corporate America or something like that?
It's similar. It's more of like an on-the-job staging.
Sure.
Think of it more like an apprenticeship almost.
I see.
But without the rigidity of like the traditional European apprentice system.
And then by doing that system, does that parlay instantly like through their system into a job, or then can you take that work experience, that stage experience that you have, to then parlay that into getting your foot in the door at a different restaurant?
Both of those things.
Yeah.
Both. So some really, really high-end restaurants, that somewhere where people are, banging down the door to work there, you might have to put in some time working for free, and that's like an extended interview, so they can see what your work ethic is, what your habits are, how you handle yourself in the kitchen, as well as your actual skill level.
Sure.
And sometimes it's just sort of a pay your dues type of thing as well.
Right. No. Talk to me about like a little bit more detail in school. What was that process like? I mean, we grew up in Maryland and the Baltimore area, right? And what was like the initial culture shock? I mean, I always joke, and I said to you earlier, like this, you were saying that you were grateful for the experience of living and working in New York City, but I think it's almost kind of Hollywood-esque, right? Like we all think of, like, we've all watched movies that take place in New York and stuff like that. Like what was that kind of culture shock like, being a young man moving to New York City, kind of being on your own, and you're in school, and I'm sure that there's still fun in there too, and how did you kind of balance that? Like, what was the initial kind of culture shock like when you got there?
Well, so I had never lived outside of my parents' house until I was 20. And so I moved out from living with my mom and dad into living in Manhattan
right
at 20 years old, not knowing
that's
anything about anything. Yeah. So I would say the culture shock was immense, and it wasn't just the culture of New York City or the hustle and bustle. It was just the culture of becoming an adult, and I don't even want to say an adult, but becoming my own person.
Adult.
Yeah, training wheels adult is a good way to put it. And then, there's also New York is this incredible, I said to you earlier, it's a city of stories, meaning that every moment in New York becomes this little microcosm of experience and feelings. And I'm sure that can be said about anywhere, and it sort of sounds a little effete to say it, but I really believe that. And I became swept up by, I moved there in the late spring and early summer in Manhattan, in that lower Manhattan specifically during that time. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. I'm, there's an energy of New York that's alive and electric and a little bit aggressive. And I sort of, I became swept up in that culture. And that was, at first it's pretty rough because in some ways, like there were days I had in New York where it was, my heat's not working, my shower's cold, I'm going to go work, 12 or 14 hours and I don't know what to do. And I feel like I'm failing. But then there's other days that it was, wow, I'm riding the Q train and I can see the sun rising from behind the entire city of Manhattan. So much so that the timing was so perfect that the Statue of Liberty in the distance has this beautiful shade of green, and all the buildings are lit up gold because the sun's coming up. And then you really feel like I'm chasing my dreams right now. I'm doing what I want to do. Right.
Well, I know that from experience. That's something that I shared with you. Like I'd visited New York City once, like just touristy. I did like the Times Square, yada yada. Like when I first graduated high school, and then I was fortunate enough about 2 or 3 years later to come through for the first time with my band, and we played in Lower East Side. I remember we tried to stay with you that night, but you were like, dude, there's no way my apartment is fitting 5 people, But yeah, there's something like, it sounds kind of cliche, right, or hallmark, but I guess those things are cliche for a reason. Like, there is something where, it is kind of I remember for us, like, being like, this is cool, like, it might not seem like a lot, but it's important, right? It's like, New York is one of those places that's internationally renowned for arts and for achievement, and it seems like it's kind of, like, closed off, and it's its own little culture, so that was cool. I can only imagine what it was like just to be there every day. Back to like your schooling, when you got into that, what were some of the challenges outside of like being in New York City? Like that aside, like once you actually got into the program, what got you into wanting to do that? And then like in terms of cooking, and then what were some of the challenges that maybe you initially got right off the bat as you jumped in?
Well, initially, I sort of, I'd done the college thing a little bit, kind of just, non-start. And most of my time was spent like watching food videos or trying to cook. And, my father suggested, hey, you should maybe just think about culinary school. And I did, and I found ICC online, and I ended up driving up to Manhattan with my parents and taking a tour and just being blown away by not just the facilities but just the culture. And, they gave us freshly daily baked baguettes to go home. They said, thank you for traveling so far. Like it was the hospitality and the warmth and just the freshness of the food. And just in that one night, I tried things that I've been wanting to try for years, but never had the opportunity to. And I thought, I'd like to, no pun intended, take a bite out of that.
Right. And you're probably thinking like, well, shit, if I'm already scratching things off the list, like just in terms of visiting, right?
Exactly.
What are the possibilities of I'm actually enrolled in this program, right? Once you graduated, what was it like transitioning? I know you talked about doing some of the apprenticing and stuff like that. Once you finally were working in New York, like kind of run me through. I don't need any specifics of locations and things like that, but in terms of the culture and maybe some of the challenges that you had, some of the learning experiences you had initially, like right off the bat, as you kind of got fully immersed into the restaurant business.
Well, I would say what's interesting about, so if you go to say like an academic university to be, I don't know, a programmer or an accountant, you're going to learn. You're going to absorb information. That's your purpose. Once you absorb the information, you don't have work experience, you do have the requisite knowledge to be able to do something.
Sure.
Whereas cooking is a physical craft.
Right.
So when you get out of culinary school, you have some knowledge, but there's just this ocean of information, not just information, but the physical skill and craft that you don't have yet.
Right.
So
and sidebar, like, is that something where, like, obviously, and this can be argued too for something like accounting or programming, but something like that's more like on the definite, like a technical side, where obviously there's technicalness and cooking as well, but it's one of those things where you truly need to pay your dues and kind of make the mistakes and have time in the industry to kind of find your groove, even though you've been through the schooling. Like, when you really need, like, to just get out there and work, I'm sure, to grow as a chef.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so there's something that this is a little bit of an older generation of cooks now, because, you have to remember that up until I would say the last 15 or 20 years, being a chef or cook was not really glamorous in America.
Sure.
I mean, it is a blue collar profession. It still is in a lot of ways. There wasn't this magic of like, oh, chef is making me this meal and yada, yada, yada. And TV chefs, that wasn't around. So,
right. Well, that was one thing I was going to say. Do you think that is something like due to the rise of cooking on TV that's kind of sensationalized it, like on some right, like in some way due to people like Bobby Flay, Gordon Ramsay, that have maybe slightly shifted the perspective of that in the 21st century, where still can be this blue collar job, but there is like now this more televised, glamorous side to it.
Well, no, I think that what they've done is good. Is that when you eat, like, you're putting food into your body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sort of, I guess this is a biased perspective, but it's kind of weird to me that we don't focus more on food. And not to get on the soapbox, but like eating stuff that's from a farm or a farmer's market or not super processed is really important, I think. And it's something that, like, in a sense, restaurant food is processed, but I mean not in a factory with preservatives. Like, it's still real food that someone's made, and that's this beautiful celebratory experience. They talk about in restaurants that you're choreographing a moment often, because it's people don't always come to restaurants to eat. So a restaurant someone comes to eat is called a destination restaurant. Like, I'm going here because I want to try XYZ by Chef ABC.
Right.
Whereas a lot of times people come, I want to propose to my wife or my fiance, or I want to celebrate a birthday,
or just have like that relaxing Friday out
exactly
after a long week.
Exactly. Right? So I think what they've done is good. I think that the more, and this ties into another topic that when I first got out of culinary school, and really I would say within a year and a half after that, it was what felt like a golden age of food in America. I mean, food culture was and is explosive here.
Yeah, definitely.
Just from what people are cooking at home, from what they're reading, from what they're watching, to what restaurants are cooking, to what the techniques they're using. I mean, it's just absolutely explosive here. Culturally speaking, I think that the pandemic really flipped everything on its head.
Right. And that's something that I wanted to get into, like, coming out of that golden age, right? Like, you're probably on the rise, right? Like, you're out of school and you're working, and it's this exciting time, right? And probably a couple years in now, you're starting to probably hit your stride on some level, right? Getting different work experiences and things like that. And then obviously the pandemic hits, and I think that's been documented, how it's hit different industries. But from you, again, like, we don't need any specifics in terms of like places, but kind of walk us through that process. Like, I mean, obviously super detrimental, I'm sure, to you and colleagues and things like that, but kind of walk us through what it was like navigating the initial and then the fallout from that.
So, I mean, speaking frankly, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean like it's this beyond that it was just this terrible experience. It was, if I could conjure the worst possible scenario to come up,
sure,
that's what happened.
Right. And affecting so many
people, and not just the service workers, but the business owners and the people who invest in them, and the businesses that support restaurants. So linen companies, like every business that had any sort of tie to a restaurant or food. There's suppliers, farms, farmers, wholesalers,
right? I guess you don't
fishers,
think of the domino effect that kind of comes out of that.
I mean, so aside from the economic, I mean, the first phase of it was this, all right, cool, there's a disease, it's smart, we're shutting down for a couple weeks. And as the pandemic progressed and then raged, it was then disbelief that, okay, maybe it's a month. And then after that, it was, I would say, utter fear for me, at least me personally, and the people close to me, is that I don't know, I'm not able to earn a living the way I know how.
Right. I'm sure, like, by moving yourself up there into these different locations, you've kind of put all your chips on the table, right? Like, you've relocated yourself, you've delved into this career, right? And it's one of these things that we can never see coming, right? Like,
exactly.
It's one of those things where, like, if a singular restaurant closes, there's always and as hard as that is, there's always the possibility, well, then there's another one that you can transition to, right?
Correct.
And that the transition may be brief in between, right? But when all of your options are closed and the country is closed, and basically you're being told that this industry that you've committed yourself to and have such passion for is basically off the table for an unconceivable amount of time as the goalposts continue to move, I'm sure that's just an absolute nightmare, like you said. I
mean, it was a nightmare, but it also, I think it really forced a reckoning that I really think was needed. There's a famous chef out there named David Kinch that he owns a restaurant in California called Manresa, and I have the cookbook, the cookbook titled Manresa. It's something that a chef recommended I buy, and I'm glad I did. But he released a statement at one point that said, nay, this was not a golden age, but a gilded age. And I think that's correct, that, restaurant work is hard.
Yeah.
For any position, not just cook. If you're a server, if you're a bartender, if you're a barback, if you're a night porter, there's a lot of both seen and unseen faces and jobs that happen that often for long hours, low pay, it's thankless sometimes. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking the whole industry, but I do think that a reckoning was needed. And now, did we need to have this terrible pandemic? No. I mean, I think there could have been a better way, but again, unplanned.
Right.
But
Trying to take some kind of silver lining out of the
yeah,
situation.
exactly. And I think that now people, I'm not just talking about labor or relations or things like that, but there's both, the treatment of employees, the pay structures, but also I think concepts and the way people are going to start to open businesses has really made people think about, hey, if I'm going to invest so much of my money, time, heart, and soul, blood, sweat, and tears into something like a restaurant, which requires all of that,
Sure.
I really have to do it right, because look what can happen.
Right, too. And do you think, like, something I was wondering, like, I've seen people in other industries that have kind of touched on this, whether it be like music or things like that. Like, do you think coming out of this with those adjustments made, plus you factor in people now that are safe, able to do it, and maybe people that are hungering, no pun intended as well, hungering to come back, do you think like maybe like we can go from the Gilded Age to some form of a golden age with restaurants, where if the structures are changed and the people are there, that true positive change can come out of this terrible situation on some level?
I absolutely do. I think the sort of cold hard truth of restaurants that yes, they're creative, and I could spend the rest of this podcast talking about how restaurants are an art form in this way or that way. At the end of the day, it's a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
It is a business.
Sure.
It's a very expensive, very risky business at that. I mean,
Right.
restaurant failure rate in New York City, last time I was there, was about 97%.
Wow.
Around the country, I
Sheesh.
think it's somewhere around 70 to 75. I'll have to, don't quote me on that, but
Right.
that's,
So you're more likely to fail than not.
you are
Yeah.
very likely to fail. In fact,
Yeah.
you're not only more likely, you're highly likely to fail.
Yeah.
That being said, I think that as the pandemic declines and more people feel more comfortable, that will allow restaurants to have the financial ability to make these changes.
Sure.
Now, in some ways, I think that's the realistic look at it. The sort of the humanist look is that these changes need to happen regardless of whether or not somebody or someone or something makes money. That the treatment of people and their wages and things like that, have been depressed for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
especially in restaurants, and it needs to change. So I'm sort of reluctant from both angles, but also optimistic from both angles.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's a great point. One thing that you had touched on there, and you're absolutely right, we could do a whole podcast of that. I mean, hey, stay tuned. Was that cooking is an art form and stuff like that, and that's why I wanted to have you on it. It made sense, right? Like that you were one of the people that came to my head when I was getting together. Well, if I started this podcast again, who would be on it, right? I've said before, I didn't want it to just be musicians. I wanted people that made physical medium art. They cooked, they painted, did things like that. Talk to me about, like, as you get your work experience, right? You get your years and your reps in the industry, right? Then you're kind of are you able then to maybe take more liberties and then to kind of explore, and have you? And if so, like, how? Talk to me, like, give me kind of a brief summarization of your style and the way that you prefer to cook, like whether that be the dishes themselves, the presentation, kind of your process with that.
So what happened for me, and I think I've spoken to some other cooks about what happens, is that when you first get out of culinary school, you're first in, you look at, these very like molecular gastronomy and complicated food, because it's in theory like it's the most difficult, or it's this, that, or the other thing, or it's the coolest looking. I'm not knocking that at all. That's amazing, and the people who do that have so much talent, and they work so hard, and they put something out that's amazing. But for me personally, what happened was almost a little bit of a scaling back. That it was sort of like I was focusing on the micro, and I needed to look at the macro, and that there's this ocean of history, thousands and thousands of years, tens of thousands of years of human history. I mean, there's, not to get too deep on it, but there's an argument out there, or a theory, or whatever you want to call it, that human beings evolved from lower primates because we cook our food. So the size of our skull enlarged to fit our brain, if I remember correctly, because the size of the jaw needs to be so much bigger for animals like chimpanzees or gorillas, because they spend so much time chewing raw material. Now, when we do something like cook a piece of meat or cook a squash to soften it, you don't have all these raw starches and fibers you need to digest. You can eat something. It's
right. So our bodies naturally developed like, oh, well, that's not so hard anymore. We don't need these
big
Jay Leno.
Yeah, exactly.
Anymore,
right. And so, let's grow the brain a little bit.
Right.
And that's fills me with wonder. But beyond that, you look at, you know, there's pre-Roman, like adding white wine to shellfish with garlic. I mean, that's thousands and thousands of years old. And now
Right.
there's endless combinations or variations on that. You know,
Sure.
you could talk about linguine vongola or something from the Mediterranean, or even moules marinière, or, you know, from France, or any type of moules dish, right? So like, that's just one example, but that's just Mediterranean cuisine. For me, I think what you just saw, that scaling back, the looking at, there's so much history, and how can I put it? Imagine you're a painter and you have 8 colors, and now, you know, you see someone who invented a new color and is mixing that with other ones. Instead of looking at that, it's more like, now here are all these classical combinations of colors. Let me look at those and figure out and learn about those and figure out what they are. And, you know, oh, what's you know, what is spaghetti alla chitarra? What is beef bolognese? Like, what is, you know, what is lamb plov from Uzbekistan? You know, that was one of the wonders of living in New York, is like every day off I could go experience a culture I never knew before.
Right.
So I would say, in regards to my personal style, my food, you know, I'm still learning, still humble. You know, there's people out there who have a lot more experience and knowledge than I do, but at least for me personally, what I like is, I would describe my own cuisine or food as neoclassical, meaning I like to take those classic flavor combinations, maybe mix them with other ones. So like, to give you an example, I think that, you know, there's a lot of similarity, obviously, between cuisines of the Mediterranean. You know, Spanish, Italian, French. I love those cuisines, but I love using Japanese ingredients, specifically things like kombu and more higher quality soy sauces like white soy or shiro shoyu. You know, that's like the soy sauce like kikkoman you get is really, there's a lot more soy in it as opposed to wheat. So all soy sauce has gluten. Otherwise it's called tamari. But you know, like white soy is really mostly wheat, and that gives it a more floral, sort of lighter body. It has these insane floral notes to it that's almost like bread. So that's something that, working in New York, and as well as working with some other people, you learn that, well, you can have a Spanish cuisine or something that's loosely Spanish, but you can use things like kombu or Japanese ingredients. It's really, you're not looking to make it taste Japanese or make it taste like seaweed or make it taste like soy sauce. You're using that to add a nice background note that'll make people go, that was so delicious. I don't know what it was. There is this flavor there.
That's X factor.
Yeah, exactly. X factor. But beyond that, like, I don't know. I could babble about this endlessly, but
Do you think that's why New York City is such a hot spot for the industry? Not only, obviously, the monetary reasons, right, that people can afford to open up these restaurants, but also because it is such a mecca of a melting pot of cultures for America, right? Like you said, like on your day off, you can go and discover cuisine from a country that you've never thought that you would have before, right? Do you think that is like one of the positives that you got, like opposed to training and like maybe a area that was like a little less multicultural or things like that?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah. 1,000%. It's not only that, but, you know, New York is one of the sort of big international melting pots in the world. New York is up there with the rest of them in terms of competition. So, you know, it attracts the best. And something someone told me once is that always try to work with people who are better than you. Not as people, but better than you at the craft. You know, be like the young person, so you can always keep learning. And that's really true about New York. I found that,
like, iron sharpens iron.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, just so if I remember correctly, Jackson Heights, Queens is the most diverse place on the planet. I mean, there's sections of Brooklyn where, you know, you can take a 20-minute train ride and you can go from having really, really, you know, fantastic bread or something like that at a Colombian bakery, and you drive 20 minutes and then you have, I don't know, hot pot or something like that. But is it shabu shabu, Japanese style hot pot, or is it, you know, Chinese style? Or then, oh no, I'm going to Little Sheep Mongolian restaurant in Manhattan for Mongolian style hot pot. Or maybe I want to go to K-Town late at night and have, you know, whatever Korean food. You know, something else that I loved was just, I don't want to say street food, but just discovering, being able to walk around at a neighborhood I've never been before and might not ever go to again because the city's so sprawling. Right. But, oh, there's this woman grilling some sort of meat. I don't know what it is. All right, here's $5. Let me try it. Right. And then I try something I've never had before. Yeah. But then there's also these, I don't want to say temples, but in some way there are these amazing, incredible restaurants, and there's not just one or two or three or four or five. There's 50 or 60 or 70 or 100 different restaurants where everybody has a vision and everybody's pushing for something, and it's very, very cool to be part of that culture.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's very cliche, but it sounds very magical.
It really is. Yeah. New York is a magical place.
Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of food, food is a big theme here on our podcast. Some of our guests have been able to enjoy some food with us. We're going to jump into some segments, and then I think you're going to have a little spin on food, right? Obviously, we had to bring highbrow stuff if we're dealing with the chef here. We can do this again at the end, but let the people know where they can find you on social media, and we'll have it as well on the screen for them to easily reach you.
Absolutely. I'm really only on Instagram, and you can find me at lemon_vin.
Gotcha. Hit them up. When are you gonna start taking some food orders? Right, you're gonna have people hitting you up right after hearing all of this.
Yeah, I have a couple irons in the fire. I would say stay tuned, and there'll be some things coming up. But for now, just if you have questions, anything, hit me up.
That's your man. All right, we'll be right back. We're gonna hop into some segments.
Dehydrated. You need to drink probably like 12 bottles of water. Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember I did drink.
And we're back. I mentioned before we got to the break that, we usually have our food segments, right? Like the past, Jadoni, we had some great mac and cheese. Dan and Lamore, we did a great bev check, right? So unfortunately, Harry, you're going to be a little bit of a guinea pig here today. There's food, okay. And I use that in a loose term.
It is food, then.
They're technically beans. Are you familiar with the game Bean Boozled?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, well,
I'm intrigued, though.
We're going to get familiar. So this is a new segment that we prepared called Bean Boozled. And this is a game. Basically, there are, as I take the lid off here, there are multiple different jelly beans here. And as you can see, there's kind of like a Wheel of Fortune type wheel, right? So it's basically a 50-50 chance. So if you were to land, let's say we spin the wheel and you land on like a, right here, it's like this dark kind of brownish color. It could either be chocolate pudding, that sounds pretty good, or not so good, canned dog food.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
not as appetizing, right? So I'm gonna ask you. We're gonna do 3 rounds. I'm gonna ask you a food related question, and then we're gonna hop in and I'll do it with you. Hey, we're both in this together. Here, let me move your order back a little bit. Off camera right here, we have a trash can prepared. And I know what you're thinking, Kyle, that's a little dramatic. No, it's not, actually. As you will see. It's not dramatic. It's actually quite realistic. Yeah, so if you're ready, like I said, I know it's not the high cuisine that we've had in the past, but I figured your palate's refined enough to give this a go.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
Okay. So the first question I wanted to ask you before we do our spin here, if you could have a death row meal, what would be your death row meal?
That's so difficult.
I know, that's why I asked it.
I truly don't know, because I think, do I want something that's sort of expensive and decadent and luxurious, or do I want something that I know is just delicious? I think, honestly, do I have to answer? Do I have to pick one?
I mean, hey, I'm going to make you eat 2 beans if you don't. For me personally, I would go with whatever just was quality of taste. At that point, I'm being as gluttonous as possible on my way out.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what I would have to do to get on death row. So
right.
I'm gonna assume I was wrongly accused or something like that. So let's go
Absolutely.
with.
Of course, we would never do anything wrong.
Let's go with.
100 miles from home.
Let's go with a piece of seared foie gras, maybe
Okay.
some sort of compote, something beautiful like blueberries or pear, some nice toasted brioche, and like an herb salad.
Wow.
I think a nice thick piece of seared foie gras, like 4 or 5 ounces.
Wow. Is there dessert included in that, or?
No, I think I just eat that and
just the main.
Remember that, foie gras has been luxury since Egyptian times.
Right, and you're like, God, I can't believe they're putting me to death over petty tax fraud. That wasn't even my fault, right? For me, I think I would go the opposite route, and it would just be like, give me like every terrible food for me. Give me just every Shake Shack burger and chicken tenders that I've ever had that have been incredible.
It's like, who cares at that point, right?
Right, yeah. Like, I don't need to worry about the calories because I got about 15 minutes left to enjoy this anyways. So it doesn't matter how fried the food is because in about 15 minutes I will be equally as fried, right? So, did you like
Same
that, right?
Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want, I can do the honors of this first spin.
Spin away and all.
Okay. Here we go. I'm going to try to get a good one. Yeah, let's hit it. Not canned dog food. Oh, that's a strong spin. Oh, we're slowing down.
What is it? Oh, that's not a good reaction, man.
All right, man. I don't know how to break it to you. This one is either peach
All right.
or barf. Quite the contrast,
Even
right?
the word barf is just horrible.
Right, even that's kind of... So here's the hard part is we need to figure out, like, see the color here?
I do.
I think it's this one, if I had...
All right.
No, or what do you think? Do you
I
think it's
think-
this one? Or is it more of like this one, this more orangey one?
I'm comparing it, so it's either I think it is the more orangey one because the strawberry banana appears to
Okay,
be the
man.
more yellow one. So whichever. I think it's this blood red and orange one. So down the hatch. Smells like a jelly bean, so we'll see.
Well, that's the thing, that they do a good job. Until you get that crack,
It
you
won't
don't
release.
really know.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ah.
Double barf. What are the odds? This is rigged. Are we sure we got ones with good ones in it?
Trying to get the ranch. Oh,
I'm glad we ate a full meal right before
yeah.
we did this, right? It's sitting super nice.
Let's do jump squats now.
Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah.
That was worse than I thought it would be. They did a good job of making it
They
disgusting.
did a great job of making it disgusting. Give me a second here. I'm a little frazzled. I'm
Give
trying to
it a
remember
sec.
what my next question was.
Boy.
Jeez. Okay, yes, I know what it is. What is your go-to meal that you like to make for yourself? So if you're at home, it's just you and you're preparing dinner for yourself, what's one of the go-to things that you add to the grocery list that you make sure that you're having during the week?
For me, it's tortilla española. So that's sort of like the Spanish version of a frittata.
Okay.
It's something I learned how to make in New York. I worked at a restaurant where that was a very popular menu item, and I did the math. I've made at least over 1,300 of them.
Wow.
So, I mean, some days, they were made fresh daily.
Mm-hmm.
You'd work there between 5 to 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And at very minimum, maybe one day a week, you'd make one, and most days you'd make between 2 and 4.
Wow.
And so each one is 11 eggs and 2 to 3 potatoes. So it's eggs. The way I make it, it's eggs, confit potatoes, confit onions. And I switch it up. I'll add some aromatics to the confit to really perfume it with flavor. And also I'll save the oil from that, and I'll turn that into an aioli. So that's just very classically in Spain, you eat tortilla with aioli, which is like a garlic mayonnaise. So it's this eggs, potato, onion, delicious sort of creamy frittata thing, and you dip it in aioli. So that's a go-to at home. Also another go-to is I love to eat just a bowl of rice with a fried egg. So what I like to do is I'll make a bunch of condiments on my days off. So one day I'll make rayu, which is like a Japanese sort of chili, garlic, ginger condiment. Another day I might make something like, a homemade kosho, which is a preserved Japanese citrus. Another day I might make something Indian, like maybe a dal, and just different mix and match with rice and a fried egg. Because, home, heat up whatever I had before, add a bunch of condiments or fresh herbs, and the egg fried in brown butter is just a really warming meal.
Wow, I'm actually getting my appetite back after that bean. I'm surprised. That all sounds very, very good. Well, you know what time it is now.
Let's do it
I
again.
think it's your turn to do the honors. You can seal our fate. If you want to give it a spin, I'll hold it for you.
Line cooks are masochists, so
Yeah. Coconut or spoiled milk?
Oh, God.
I think that this is
This is gonna be worse, I think.
this real solid white one here.
This one right here.
Listen, man, this is double coconut all the way. The bad thing is I actually hate coconut, so
Oh, I love coconut.
this is going to be kind of rough either way, maybe. I mean, obviously there's a worse choice, right?
I don't want to eat spoiled milk.
I don't want to eat spoiled milk
really
either.
don't. All right, you ready?
Begrudgingly, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Fuck that.
I don't know if it was coconut or spoiled milk. It just was bad. Wait. Nah, that was coconut. My bad. I just don't like coconut, I guess. So you're 2 for 2.
Yeah, that I don't think that was coconut at all. I think it was spoiled milk.
I think I was just anticipating it being bad, and at the first bite, you kind of get the sugar at first,
Yeah.
and then the flavor comes through, and I think I was just like sealing. I thought my fate was sealed.
It tasted to me like someone mixed spoiled milk with simple syrup.
Okay, yeah.
And
I feel like that's how a lot of these are,
I
right?
think that might have been how it was made.
All right, man. Well, unfortunately, we have one more left,
Let's do it.
and one more round. This is going to be a little bit of a, a little bit of a joke one here at the end. I want you to settle a couple food debates, 2 for me. In
Let's
fact,
do it.
Right? Pineapple and pizza, yes or no?
Absolutely yes.
See, I like the concept of it. I'm not a pineapple guy. Don't hate it as much as I hate, like, let's say coconut or something like that. But I like the concept of. I'm a huge fan of the salty and sweet contrast.
Absolutely.
And I think you add a little ham, a little bacon, you kind of get some of that saltiness to it. I'm for it in a conceptual sense.
I mean, I think that when you look at what are the flavors of classic pineapple pizza, sort of, I hate to say deconstructed, but let's say seasoned pork, tomato,
Yeah.
cheese, and pineapple.
Mm-hmm.
Well, pineapple goes really well with pork. Pineapple, in theory, also goes well with tomato. Now you have
Right.
something with spicy pork like pepperoni that goes well with pineapple. Cheese will add a delicious umami and richness to it. I mean, just the combination of cheese, sauce, and people love that. It's
Right,
delicious.
right.
So
Especially
adding
like
pineapple,
the acidity of fruit with cheese seems to be kind of
exactly.
like the base. that goes
Especially
for it.
like I don't like canned pineapple on pizza. I hate canned pineapple. It's sweet
Yeah.
but fresh pineapple put on pizza and cooked, yeah, that's delicious.
All right, I'm gonna have to do that. And then finally, if you had to put ketchup on one of the 2 things, which one would you rather have it on? Eggs or macaroni and cheese? If you had to.
I think mac and cheese,
Yeah, I agree.
personally.
I'm not one of those people that goes out of my way. If I make mac and cheese, I'm like, oh, let me grab the ketchup bottle. But if I'm eating something that somehow has, and I get a little ketchup on my mac and cheese, I'm not, especially if you get a nice, like, kind of sweet ketchup,
Yeah, I mean, I think eggs can be a very beautiful, subtle flavor. I've also
Eggs, I feel like, are a good base to which you build upon or something like that.
I agree, but also I think that ketchup is a very strong flavor, and
Yeah.
sometimes you balance strong flavors with other strong flavors. Excuse me. In that sense, that mac and cheese, you have something sort of heavy and rich, and like a cheese, the tomato and the acidity and the sweetness will balance well. Whereas with an egg, I like the flavor themselves of eggs. I don't need my eggs hammered. I can't tell you how many brunch services I've slung eggs at, right? So I can. It's like that scene from.
You can do it in your sleep, right? You're like,
Not quite that, but it's that scene from Forrest Gump where the guy lists all the different types of shrimp.
Right.
It's like that with
See
me
with
with
eggs.
eggs. So ketchup on the mac and cheese, please.
Okay, there you go. Well, one thing that we don't have ketchup on, and there is no ketchup flavored
Oh, God.
one, is unfortunately the beans. Let's give it one last spin. Oh, we had this one already, so let's
All right.
give it another spin. That was the barf peach. again.
Mulligan,
Oh, that didn't count. That didn't count.
triple mulligan.
Triple mulligan, right? Okay. Toasted marshmallow or
Ooh.
stink bug.
Oh,
I believe that is going to be this whitish, opaque
this
one
one?
with a
The little brown
little
flecks?
bit of
All
brown
if
flecks
this is
on it.
stink bugs, I'm gonna kill every stink bug I see.
I feel like this.
And you should, because it's an invasive species.
I feel like this. I don't know, but like dead fish, we can maybe point something towards. I don't know what stink bug would.
Stink
would be.
bugs to me smell like a unpleasant version of cilantro.
Okay, that actually kind of makes sense. I kind of get that. Let's find out.
Cheers.
Cheers. Stink bug hard. Harry went 3 for 3. Wow.
Ah,
Grace, did you rig these off
like
camera?
Cilantro
Did you?
flavored diaper.
There goes my coaster. Holy shit.
Oh, got
Dude,
it.
it's lingering.
This is like there's
Are you
an
getting
acrid
that?
burnt taste.
Yeah. Yes, I'm getting that too.
Is this just a turd sandwich of jelly beans? Because it feels like, I mean, I know turd sandwich wasn't the flavor, but it feels like this is a
Sure.
box
I mean,
of
hey,
shit.
it might as well have been. I think maybe Grace doctored these off camera with the kind of luck that we're having tonight.
Huh.
Hey, man. Well, we survived. No hard cuts for throw up or anything like that.
A little retching.
A little retching, but hey, I think we stuck our head in the trash can far enough. Second segment. This is a quick one. The new little 101 that we want to try is called My Worst.
Oh, boy.
And, I think that this could be applicable to a couple different things. But the one thing that I want to ask you is my worst blunder on the during the work day. Is there a short little anecdote that you can tell us, like a mistake that you made that you still keeps you in bed at, like, when you're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. that enters your mind every once in a while?
There's two, actually, but I'll go with the more funny one.
Hit me.
So I was working in a restaurant in New York, and they encouraged cooks to be creative, which is really awesome. Right? So they said, if get all your work done, get everything done you need to for service, because service is the most important thing. But if you have extra time, and you run it by us, we'll give you some license to, maybe you want to ferment something, make some of this or that. Ask us first, but we can do it. And I said I wanted to ferment some mushrooms, and relatively speaking, compared to other mushrooms, button mushrooms are not that expensive.
Okay.
And so we had some extra, and I said I want to make fermented mushrooms because I'd read about it in the NOMA Guide to Fermentation, which that really for me was, not just for me, but for the whole culinary scene, was this flavor Bible. I mean, they cracked open this entire, not new, but sort of they recodified and repackaged all these different ideas of fermentation from all these different times and cultures into one, like, Bible almost. And it's an amazing, amazing book. I read it cover to cover, and one of their famous sort of tools in their tool belt that they use is lacto-fermented cep or porcini mushrooms. Now, I didn't have porcinis, I had button mushrooms, but I really wanted to try it. Now, I'd been doing a jar fermentation method because we didn't have a vacuum sealer license or a vacuum sealer. So I fermented them in a glass jar, meaning I took mushrooms, cleaned mushrooms, rubbed them in a percentage of salt. And I don't remember if I covered them with water. I don't believe I did because I didn't do a brine. I just rubbed them with salt. But naturally, when salt pulls moisture out of things, and mushrooms are filled with moisture, so creates its own liquid, and you make sure the liquid's tamped down and it's completely submerged so as not to allow molds or other bad bacteria to infested, I guess you would say.
Sure.
Now, the issue was the kitchen was in the basement in what was essentially a building in Manhattan. So I kept yeast fermenting them, or yeast was allowed to populate. Now, I only wanted lactobacilli, that is to say lactic acid fermentation or lacto-fermenting, because that gives it a more acidic flavor than yeast. So to counter that, I also thought it was taking a long time to ferment because since it was the basement, it was a little bit cooler down there. It was more humid, and that lent itself to yeast fermentation. I didn't like that. I had one batch get messed up, so I tried another batch. And to speed up fermentation, because I had seen one of the chefs do a different type of fermentation that really what it needs is a higher heat. Now, this should not have done. I should not have done this. I put the covered glass jar, which I shouldn't have covered it as much as I did. I should have left more room for air to escape. I put it on the top of one of the ovens. So if you're making something like a garum or something like that, you want a higher heat because you need you want to cook it essentially. Not cook it. It's hard to explain. I'm not going to go into the depths of garum making because again I've only really experimented with it a little bit and read about it. But long story short, I put this glass jar of mushrooms above the oven. Now, my station was a satellite station upstairs in front of the dining room, almost like a chef's counter. We called it, it was a chef's counter, essentially. And that did about 25 to 30% of the menu. Now, the main kitchen was downstairs. That's where we did all of our prep. So the other stations were there. Now, the oven was next to the paella station and the fry station, and there was a 6-burner to the left of the oven. So I'd say the top of the oven was about, I don't know, call it 4 feet above my shoulder, around that, and I put the glass jar up there, and now it got hot during service, and so much gas built up in the sealed jar that it literally fucking exploded. And broken glass went into a bunch of food during service, in the middle of service. That means you have to refire food and remake it, and Yeah, that was probably my biggest blunder. It was not smart, and it just yeah, no, it was not good.
But only food was hurt.
Only
in the
food
process.
was hurt. No one was hurt. It made a
That's
really
great.
loud, explosive sound, and everybody was pissed off. 'Cause I had no idea what happened because I'm upstairs. I come down at the end of the night. Hey guys, and they're all like, dude, like.
Right.
So I was called the mushroom bomber, mushroom terrorist, things like that. Yeah, not my most shining moment, but there's that.
Hey, I think that was a pretty good one, right? Who would have thought, right, that food could become a potentially dangerous explosive?
Correct.
Right? Wow. Hey, well, anyone out there, don't take that advice, right? Like, let's not have mushroom bombs.
Don't be a
going out,
jackass.
right. Well, this has been great, man.
Likewise.
As always, we have one segment that we always do at the end, right? And it is called Tweet the Rock.
Tweet the Rock.
Right. I think if you look off camera, I believe maybe it's to your right on the floor. Do you see a piece of clothing? Is it currently there?
Do see a piece of clothing. Should I put this piece of clothing on?
I think maybe you could grab it first, and then we can kind of go from there.
Should I do a little look-see for the camera?
Yeah, if you would like to put it on, as always, it's the jersey that we like to don when we tweet the Rock. If you would like to put it on, I would be honored. Every guest besides one, and I will bring it up every time. Lamore didn't wear it. People's champ. Let's put it on. Yeah. Here we go. Harry's gonna rock the jersey live here on 100 Miles from Home. Looks great. This jersey looks great on anyone. That's how you know it's blessed by the Rock himself. Now, I know you're not a Twitter person, so I will handle this. But if I could relay from you one message to the Rock via Twitter, what would you like to say to the Rock?
I would say in his wrestling days, I know they put some lubricant on themselves to look shiny and good for the cameras.
Yeah, a little bit of baby oil.
A little bit of baby oil. I mean, he's got a big chest, right? So when he's getting rolled around the mat, do his nipples ever bleed? And if so, how do you account for that while you're filming? Does wrestlers' insurance cover bloody nipples, or like what? How's this going?
That would definitely be a weird injury to come to the back with. So, funny thing about The Rock and nipples, and I can't believe I'm saying this right now, right? But he actually had this thing, so he's from Samoan descent, He's half black and half Samoan. And he had something that people can get where, like, they have, like, kind of, like, man boobs, but not from, like, eating unhealthy, just they have, like, a little more estrogen or something like that. And he actually got the surgery that cut out some of, like, the excess fat of from like his boobs, from his chest, and
when
his
we say
pecs.
moobs,
his moobs, yeah, there we go. And he actually wrestled with a T-shirt on, like a kind of like a jersey, kind of like this, for a couple months, and no one knew why. And coming out later, he was recovering from the surgery.
See, I was kind of trying to be funny, but now I just feel like a jerk.
No, I think that's still great. I think in a weird way, it's actually a pretty good question. You're on that rough canvas, that rough mat, right?
Can't be soft, right?
Right. It's not. I think people tend to think that there's some kind of trampoline or something like that underneath the ring, but it's not. It's canvas and plywood and some steel beams, So
Ouch.
shouts out to all the people out there that are wrestlers. I can ask him. I think maybe he won't respond to this one, but we can try, right?
Let's try it.
And if he does respond to this one, what a weird one to respond to. So you want to ask The Rock if, while he's lubed up out there doing his thing, if he's ever had, a little bit of a nipple bleedage.
Exactly.
As always, if you would like, we could get a picture of us together, because I think it's
Can
important.
I take the jersey off now?
If possible, I would love for you to keep it on
All
in
right,
the picture.
I'll keep it on. Let's do it.
Is there any kind of cool pose or anything that you want to do?
Not particularly.
We could point at the camera, right? Awesome. And the tweet will be on the screen. I'll go ahead and I'll tweet that from my Twitter. Hopefully, actually, fuck that. Hopefully we don't get a response. If we do, then what a weird one to
really
end
uncomfortable.
on. I said that the day we get a tweet from The Rock reply is the day that we end the podcast. So he has all the power in his hands, right? So he has the keys to
or
the
in his
kingdom.
nipples.
Or his nipples, right? Well, truly on this one, he has all the power in his nipples. Let's wind up. I'm thinking about The Rock's nipples too much, right? I'm getting a little flustered. Once again, it was great having you on here, and it was great to see you again. And
likewise.
And if you want to tell the camera where they can find you and any kind of upcoming things you have going on, please do.
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at lemon_vin. I have a couple projects in the works, and just anything you want to ask me, feel free to ask. That's it. Kyle, it was a pleasure being here.
Of course, and basically what Harry's saying is if you need to know how to like fry an egg or something at 2 a.m., definitely slide into his Instagram DMs.
Please.
He will tell you everything that you need to know.
Fried eggs, boiled eggs, broiled eggs, poached eggs, hard poached, soft poached, 6 minute, 7 minute, hard boiled, soft boiled, medium eggs, sheared eggs, scrambled eggs, soft scramble, hard scramble, over easy, over medium, over hard, tortilla, omelet, French omelet.
My God, my man just went off. I'm just like, do I want him dippy or not? That's pretty much where I'm at. As always, you can find all of us online at 100 Miles Media on Instagram. You can find me online on Instagram at WoolXGod, as well as Twitter at WoolXGod. New episodes of the podcast drop every other Wednesday. So 2 weeks from now, you'll see another one with another future guest. Harry, it's great to see you, my man. We'll have to do this again soon. Hey, man, you broke my wrist. It's okay, though. It's okay. And hopefully this will not be the last time we see you on 100 Miles from home, as well as 100 Miles in general. I think that we have some great ideas that will be coming your way very soon via the interweb. Thank you, everyone, for checking this out, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. Peace.